Hello ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another video. Let's take a look at this machine here. Now this machine, if you haven't figured out by the title, is a dual Athlon build, Athlon XP build. And I got this from a friend, local guy I've gotten a lot of computer stuff off of. Sometimes he just decides to trim off some of his collection and, you know, he usually hands it off to me, what he doesn't want anymore. And honestly, I didn't know what to do with this thing. And I got it home, I booted it up real quick just to see if it worked. I don't even remember what's in this thing, to be honest. Just booted it up, did a quick look on YouTube. No one had really done videos on a dual Athlon XP system. There's, you know, there were gameplay, but no one actually did like an overview video. Threw it in my car trunk, and it's been there for 3 months. And I decided to take it out and finally do a video on it, and guess what? In that 3 months, someone actually did an overview video on a Athlon MP system. A relatively smaller YouTube channel. Well, it is a small YouTube channel, but a guy goes by the name of Rob Wolf. Check out that video. I recommend checking it out. It's probably better than this one's going to turn out, so give it a look. If I remember, I'll put a link in the description. But yeah, this is my Athlon MP system. Not quite sure. I don't really remember what the CPUs are in there. But yeah, it's kind of a cool case. Of course, these don't match. This is just what he had in there. I'll probably just swap these out with some other beige drives. Other than that, not much to say about the outside before we take a look inside. Now remember, I'm not even sure, I don't even really remember what's inside this thing. But I do remember him. I do remember him pointing out that this is an interesting board because there is actually a defect in it where the USB ports do not work. Yeah, so these ports are blocked off. So apparently the USB controller on this board was factory defective on all this model, I guess, until they did a revision. So no USB unless we use a USB card. And he has one installed right there. So, alright, I guess we'll just open this thing up and take a look inside. Alright, so what he gave me with this machine is he gave me two, what are these? 2400 pluses. So these are the thoroughbred cores, I think. So these are up there. These are close to the fastest MP chips, but they're not. But I think these are like 2 point something megahertz. I don't even know. And then I have one of these that he gave me, and this is a 3200 plus. This is a Barton core, so I believe this is the fastest that they went with the MPs. This has like the 512 KB of L2 cache, but I only have one of them. And even though games at the time, like the early 2000s, really didn't support dual processors, I'd probably practically, if we're making a period build and I just wanted something faster, I might actually just be better off putting this in, like as a single CPU, because you're better off probably with a faster single core CPU, since nothing really supported dual processing at the time. But I mean, this is a dual XP build video, so we'll just upgrade to these, because I'm assuming what's installed in there now are slower than these, or else why would he give me these? Except maybe he just had extra chip. I don't know. We'll find out. I don't, like I said, I've opened this once like months ago. Okay. Alright, so quick look inside. I see, oh, that's interesting. There's PCIX, PCI XXX slots. No, those are, I think those are PCIX PCI slots, maybe, or they're just 32 or 64. I don't know. They're PCI slots, and they're longer than normal. And there's AGP, and there's some kind of not very interesting AGP card installed. It does have composite and an S video and then VGA. I can already tell from here this is going to be probably a pretty generic sound card. No ISA, but I kind of expected that. There's our dual CPUs. RAM. This is obviously probably some kind of like server board. Hey, that's sort of interesting. So we've got our ATX, and then of course we have the 4-pin, and then there, it looks like there's a Molex that plugged in there. That's interesting. You find weird stuff like that on server boards a lot of times, or even high performance boards. So I don't see a designation for this motherboard. I do see tie-in down there. So I'll just turn the camera off, and then I will figure out what this motherboard is, and then boot it and see if it posts, which it should, because it did last time I checked. And then I don't know what to do with this thing. I'll try to find some interesting parts to throw in here. At the very least, that 9700 Pro, and play some games on it, and maybe I can find a couple titles that will take advantage of these dual CPUs. So I don't know, it's a mystery to me. It's same as you guys right now where this video is going to go. So let me check this thing out a little bit more in depth. I still don't know the motherboard model, but well, the audio card is sort of interesting. It's an Ensoniq ES1370, and he has both of the CD drives, or he had both of the CDs drives connected to it. Usually I only see one of those on cards. So I don't know, I have no experience with this card either. So audio PCI 3000. So I mean, it looks really cheap and generic. I mean, there's like nothing on this board. It just screams like budget audio card, but I don't know. I've never seen Ensoniq. I mean, I know Ensoniq cards, but I thought, didn't they get bought out by Creative at some point in the late 90s? So I don't know. I will look it up. As for the video card, I don't know. It's still in there. Let me check. Alright, the video card is a V920 Magic T from Asus, and I'm guessing it's just some kind of variation of, it's probably not a TNT2 or it looks a little bit later than that, so it's probably some kind of variation like a GeForce 2 or 4 variation, like a budget variation of some sort. So I'll look up that model as well. So I did find, you probably can't see because of the light, but I did find the board. It's just in a little thing in the corner there. It's an tie-in S2466. So I'll put the cards back in and I'll boot this thing. Caps all look okay. I'm guessing this is from the great capacitor plague era. They look okay. I don't see any like obviously bulging caps. Yeah, I'm not a big fan of boards from this era. I hate all these like tons and tons of capacitors that are prone to bursting, and it's just annoying to replace them. It's annoying it happens. It's just annoying. Going off on a tangent, you know, I've noticed a lot of YouTubers do, even channels like me that are kind of like lower production values, they usually shoot this footage, specifically guys that do like retro computer stuff. They usually shoot the footage. Oh look, this has one of those aux connectors for like a P4 socket 423 board. Anyways, they usually shoot this like the footage, and then they do the audio later, like in editing with a microphone. It says this is kind of a little bit more professional. It sounds a lot clearer and better. I've always thought about trying that out, but it always seemed like an extra step to me that I have to do. And like then I have to shoot the video, and then I have to like do the mic stuff and make sure I say what I need to say while the video's. It doesn't seem hard. It just seems like another step that I don't really want to do, but probably would make the videos a little bit more watchable. It's probably part of the reason I've been doing this 3 years and I still have under 2,000 subs. Like, I don't even have 1,500 subs yet, but I don't know. That's probably part of the reason. But I'm just lazy. Lazy game reviews has nothing on my laziness with making these videos. But I still like making them. It's still fun. It's a hobby. I want it to stay a hobby. When it comes to work, I'm not going to want to do it anymore. So anyways, that was a weird tangent. So let's hook this thing up. Alright, it's all plugged in and stuff, so oh, there it goes. But the question is, yes, we will get an image. 1800 plus, so two 1800 plus. Okay, keyboard error for some reason, even though it's plugged in. Okay, so now we know our processors. So they, what were these again? 2400 plus. Yeah, so we'll replace them with these 2400 pluses. So that should be faster. It would be nice if I did have another one of these, the 3200 plus, the Barton core, but people want, you know, like money for these on eBay, and I don't really want to spend, I don't want to put money into this build because it doesn't interest me all that much. Yeah, we'll just go with these, the 2400 plus CPUs. Maybe one day if I come across another one of these, I'll put it in and then I'll do another short video with these in there. But other than that, like I said, people want monies for it. No. Alright, so I think this is just the version of those PCI audio cards, as I suspected. Looking at the chip, an ES1370. I don't know. I've never really cared for these cards much. I know they're decent because they had decent DOS compatibility for being PCI cards, but I don't know. I've never liked these cards. I've never had much luck with them. I'll probably replace this with something more appropriate for the early 2000s anyways, like a Sound Blaster Live or something like that. This guy is actually a FX 5200, which same. I mean, it works, and that's about all I have to say about it. It works. So yeah, we're definitely going to replace that with the Radeon. And I'm curious. I'm going to pop out a stick of RAM. Oh, it is. It's DDR. Okay, so this is a DDR system. Cool. All right. All right. Cool. Alright, before we move on to switching the CPUs out to faster CPUs, these, I read some reviews on this board online. These are 64-bit PCI slots, not PCI-X or PCI-XXX. I don't even know if there's much of a difference between PCI-X and 64-bit PCI slots, but these are 64-bit PCI slots. I have no 64-bit PCI cards to actually put in those slots, but they would be for things like SCSI RAID controllers and stuff like that that need a lot of bandwidth. Supposedly it's picky about RAM, which, wow, I didn't see what the max RAM in this thing is. There's 2 gigs in there now, which might be the max. So, I mean, 4 will probably be the absolute max. I don't know if it would take 4 though, but I guess I'll go back and find out. But yeah. Alright, enough chattering out of me. Let's change these CPUs and see if it still works. Okay, I'm going to be seriously surprised if this actually worked. I don't know why I had a really hard time with these heat sinks and just putting them on and all the caps in the way and crap. And I don't know, I was really rough with them. And the CPUs didn't work before. Well, anyways, I'm curious if this is going to actually... I don't have much faith, but alright. The fans are going. And ooh. Something's happening. Ah. Okay, cool. Well, I guess they're a little more hardy than I thought, even without the heat spreaders on them. So nice. Well, there's a nice little upgrade right there. So that's the first step. So now it's just putting in the cards and throwing in an operating. I don't even know what kind of drive this is. I don't know if this is ATA 133 or 100. I don't know. But now it's just a matter of putting in the cards and loading up the OS, and then we can test some games and stuff. Alright, well, we're mostly in business. I've got XP installed. Some of the things, like the sound card's working, but it's running on like generic creative drivers. So I don't know, I'm thinking about replacing it. Seems to be working fine, but I don't know, I might replace it with something. So really what I need to do now is take out that FX and then install the 9700 Pro. There's that CPU fan on there that's not, well, it's missing a screw, so that thing runs really super loud. I think I'm going to remove that and try putting this on here, which should run a little bit, it should be a lot quieter. So we'll get back when that is completed. Alright, so there's our 9700 Pro in there with the different fan on it, and that's much quieter than before. So it doesn't even technically, it doesn't need the fan because of the giant passive, that's the whole point of the giant passive cooling heatsink on there, but these things run hot. But not quite as hot as this Mango Ghost Pepper Carolina Reaper hot sauce I made myself. A lot of stories of these cards dying because they just run real hot, so I can't really ever have enough cooling, so we have the giant massive passive cooler. I did a video on just this cooler, by the way. I'll try to link it if I remember. Check it out. But yeah, I just put that fan on there for a little extra cooling. It also actually helps cool whatever's next to it, which is just a USB card. Seems to be working. Windows XP with, you know, apparently has generic drivers for it, but I'm gonna find the latest official drivers, and I guess we're almost ready to check out some games and stuff, benchmarks. About this case though, yuck, it uses the rail system, which is kind of convenient if you don't like, you know, screwing things in and out, but if you lose these, or let's say, hey, I want to add something here, well, I don't have rails for it, it blows, so I hate the rail system. So moving on. Also, before we get into our benchmarks, I did replace those drives with some nice beige drives, a CD and a DVD drive, just to complement the beige case. Other than that, I did replace that audio PCI card with a X5 from Creative. It's a little bit later card. It's also a budget model. It's not one of the more fancy ones. It's a little bit later, but we're not really going for a strict period correct machine here anyways. I just wanted something to could do sound. I don't know if I mentioned it earlier, but the IDE controller on this board is ATA 100. I haven't really had any issues with it yet. The hard drive is a 40 gigabyte ATA 100 as well. I think it's a Seagate drive. I also upgraded the power supply from a 300 watt to a 500 watt. 300 watt was really like the minimum recommended spec for running the dual CPUs, so upgraded a little bit to avoid any possible problems that would come from you know, inadequate power. So for the benchmarks, I'm probably going to do a couple of the same benchmarks that Rob Wolf did in his video that I referenced a little bit earlier, just so I have some kind of reference, since there really isn't anyone else that has done benchmarks or an overview of this kind of machine. His machine's fairly similar to mine. I believe his CPUs that he has in there are about 400 megahertz slower than what I have in there, and the video cards are sort of comparable. He's using a 5700 FX, or an FX 5700, and I am using a Radeon 9700 Pro. My card's a little bit older. The FX is probably faster in most situations, but it might depend on the drivers. I'm using later drivers, which really helps the Radeon 9700, because the drivers at the time it came out weren't very good and it held it back. But the FX is still probably faster in almost all situations, but don't quote me on that, so I'm not sure. So mine should be a little bit faster than his. Of course, a lot of things depend. Again, I'm not really sure what settings he used, but I'm pretty much going to go with 1024 by 768 medium settings on just about everything, so we'll see. Alright, so before we get into the benchmarks, take a quick look at the system. I'm using XP 32-bit with Service Pack, the unofficial Service Pack 4. For the Radeon drivers, I was told the Omega drivers were a good bet to check out, so I just grabbed the latest ones. I'm not real familiar with the Radeon side of things, so I don't know why there's two drivers, like a primary and a secondary. Is that normal for Radeon cards? I don't know. Here we go with CPU-Z, just to show there are two CPUs being detected. Actually, I'm surprised this CPU-Z, with kind of weird motherboards and stuff, I have CPU-Z crashes a lot on me, so I was kind of surprised it worked. There's the Radeon again with those primary and secondary drivers. Like I said, I've hardly ever used Radeon stuff. I don't know, maybe that's something with the Omega drivers, but yeah, there's just a quick overlook of the system. Alright, so here is 3D Mark 2001 SE. Pretty good frame rates here. Of course, this benchmark is just single-threaded, so most of these benchmarks are not going to take advantage of the dual CPUs. It was SMP processing or using multiple CPUs was pretty rare for games and applications back in the early 2000s, so there wasn't a lot for me to use that would take advantage of those CPUs. So it's just, for a gaming machine, it's just not very useful, at least in the earlier half of the 2000s. But yeah, we're getting decent benchmarks here. I ran all these benchmarks at 1024 by 768 with 32-bit color, and I ran them all 3 times and then took an average, and that's how I got the average. So my average score with 3D Mark 2001 SE was 8,725, and yeah, I didn't have any crashes or anything weird, no weird, glitches. It went pretty well. So let's move on to 2003. So here is 3D Mark 2003, and it does pretty well. Using the same process as before to get a score with doing it 3 times and then getting an average, I got a score of 4,062, so not bad. Alright, here's Quake 3. We get about 142 frames per second. That's single-threaded mode. There is a command you can input that does enable multiprocessors or SMP processing. Unfortunately, no matter what I did, whenever I enabled SMP mode, the game would lock up. And doing some research online, a couple other people seem to have this problem as well. And here it is right here, which is usually would freeze up at the beginning here. Nothing I did made it work. I tried the demo version, I even installed the retail version, I tried updating it to the latest patch, and it would just always freeze up on me. So here's some actual gameplay footage of me playing Quake 3. I'm still not really great at this game, even though I've used it several times as a benchmark. Not really great at it. I have noticed that no matter what setup I use or how powerful the machine is or the video card, it never seems to go higher than 91 FPS count, at least using Fraps. So I don't know if this game has some sort of built-in frame limiter or something like that. Do you really need more than 91 frames per second? I would say not really, but yeah, that's something I've noticed. But the gameplay is fine, silky smooth. So I tried to run the benchmark for Comanche 4, but every time I would attempt it, I would get an error and it would fail. Now, usually these problems have workarounds and they can be figured out by tweaking the system, different video drivers. There's usually a solution you can find, especially with looking online. But it is an example. There are people that really don't want to mess around with their computer too much. They're not really computer savvy at all. And this is an example of, on this machine, something like this might trip some people up and it would put some people off. Of course, all computers are going to have issues like this are going to pop up, but it's still something we don't necessarily like to see. Now here's Doom 3 running. This is at 1024 by 768, and it runs pretty well. We got an average of about 31 frames per second, which is playable, at least to some people. Some people it's not, but I would consider that certainly playable. The one thing we do have to keep in mind with this system, or at least the motherboard, is this isn't a gaming build. This is a workstation motherboard or a server motherboard. So remember, nothing at the time, or very few things, really took advantage of the SMP processing or the dual processors, and just the board itself was not meant for like overclocking or gaming. It really is true a server board or a workstation board. So doing these benchmarks, we do have to keep that in mind. And here we have Halo running, 1024 by 768, everything set to high, and it runs very respectably. I don't think it ever drops under 30 frames per second. We even get some highs over 60. Now, to be completely honest, with the Radeon 9700 Pro, I was expecting some higher frame rates. Now, remember, the 9700 Pro would be about contemporary with this game. I think that card came out in 2002 or 2003, and I believe this game's 2003. So they are contemporaries, but I don't know. I just expected a little bit higher frame rate from this game. But then again, I am running everything at high, so I'm sure if we knock down, the special particle effects and things like that, and the resolution, we get much higher frame rates. So I suppose this might be what we should expect. Let me know in the comments if it's not, or if you've had different results.
Let's do it! I got your back! How you doing, amigo?
And here's just some gameplay from Serious Sam, another game from the period, early 2000s. This game plays fine. I think I had one situation in my playthrough where it very briefly dipped below 60 FPS, so very solid experience. Again, to reiterate, this is at 1024 by 768. And it just, it was a pleasure to play. No problems whatsoever on this setup. So upon trying to run Quake 4, which is a game that has support for multi-CPU or SMP processing, I updated it to the latest version, and when I ran it, I had this weird color effect going on where all the flame and smoke effects kind of have this weird, like, green incorporated into them, and I'm pretty sure that is a issue with drivers, because I am using later Omega drivers for the Radeon card, so I'm going to try using some slightly older drivers. So just to see if I could resolve the issue with the weird rainbow effect in Quake 4, I downgraded my video drivers to Omega 4.12, and running Quake, the color issue is fixed. But now, for whatever reason, my AverMedia capture card refuses to get any image from the computer at all. Now, it was just working before I changed the drivers, so that's the only thing I could think of. For some reason, the drivers are screwing with the AverMedia card. But then again, I have found this card to be really weird and picky, and sometimes it just works when it wants to and doesn't work when it doesn't want to. So, now, I do have a secondary capture card in that computer, which is the DVI to PCIe or something card, and that thing always captures everything. Alright, so I'm capturing with the other card now, so if there's a quality difference, I apologize. So we're going to run Quake 4. We're going to start off in single CPU mode, see how it does. 1024 by 768 at low quality. This was what the machine auto-detected and suggested we use, so we'll just use those settings. Alright, so here we go, and as you can see, the like the lighting or the fire and smoke effects are correct now. Now I do need to point out that I could not find official chipset drivers for this motherboard. I believe it uses the AMD 740 MPX chipset, and I'm running XP on this machine, and it runs fine. I don't get any, like, errors in the device manager or anything, but I looked high and low all over Google, and I just could not find any sort of chipset drivers for it. So I don't know. I remember in my Pentium 4 build, not having chipset drivers really affected the performance, but I don't know if it's having much an effect here. Like I said, I'm running a lot of the same benchmarks that Rob Wolf ran on his machine, and they seem to be matching up fairly well. So course, maybe he didn't use chipset drivers either. I don't know, but I just wanted to make that point very clear. If anyone in the comments wants to point me to any official drivers for the chipset, please do, but I looked and I could not find them either on Tie-In's website or anywhere else for that matter. So in single core mode, it does pretty well. Obviously it dips when there's action going on, when a creature jumps out and there's a lot going on, but it's not horrific. So now let's check out with dual CPU mode engaged. Alright, so here we go with dual CPU mode running or enabled in the options, and you can tell pretty quick that there is definitely a difference. The second CPU really does make the game more playable. I mean, we're not getting astronomical numbers, but yeah, I mean, it's certainly more playable than before, sort of, depending on, on the spot. But yeah, I mean, there's obviously something going on. So let's take a look at this side by side and see if we can help us better compare. And finally, I just wanted to show off Quake 4 running at a lower resolution of 800 by 600 with SMP processing enabled. So get a little bit better frame rate. You can even lower the resolution a little bit more if you want to for a little bit more performance. Overall, the game doesn't run great, but I think that probably has more to do with the video card, possibly still the drivers. There's probably still really room to check out different drivers and tweak the drivers and settings and whatnot. But yeah, throwing in a more powerful card obviously will give you better frame rates. So this is the original Far Cry at 1024 by 768 with medium presets. This was with the drivers I was using originally, the 7.12 Omega drivers for my 7900 Pro, and this is after I downgraded to the 4.12, so big difference. No, I am not getting 9 frames per second here. I just forgot to adjust my capture device, so it cut off a little bit of the screen because it was a different resolution than what it was expecting. But yeah, I mean, it still doesn't run wonderfully. I still feel like the Pentium 4 Willamette was running the game better with a GeForce 2 Ultra with the same settings. I just feel like that system was running things better. I guess I could always go back and look at that video and compare. This is certainly playable, but it's not as good as I would expect. And maybe that's because I couldn't find chipset drivers for this board, or again, maybe it's just not the right drivers. Maybe I just need to keep looking and testing different drivers. But again, this build isn't really a priority project for me. This was just something fun to throw together for a video. So again, your mileage may vary, and you could probably tweak the settings to get, you know, much better results. Yeah, so that's my little overview video on my Athlon MP build. As far as, you know, stability goes, just messing around in the OS and stuff, I had very little trouble. It didn't really crash on me installing and doing things. There was some quirks with some of the games going on, but that could be possibly attributed to driver issues. I'm sure a lot of that could have been sorted out if I messed around with things a little bit, tweaked some settings, checked tried using different driver versions and whatnot, but overall, yeah, it was pretty stable. I ran this thing for multiple hours, stressing it, and I really didn't have any issues with it. Like I said, the chipset issue with this particular motherboard and the USB issue, I guess that it's not quite a big deal. You just throw in a USB card. I believe they actually packaged that motherboard with a USB card, or machines that came with that board also came with the USB card as well. But yeah, it's an okay rig. I'm not really sure what I'm going to do with it. I have a lot of machines. It's neat, but I don't know. I might use this case for another build, and I don't know what I'm going to do with that motherboard yet. But yeah, it was fun to check out. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, of course, like and subscribe and all that crap. And I'll see you in the next video, guys, and thanks again for watching.